Hey folks, Alan Mandic, the Hot Rod Hippie here. This video we're going to be installing a rear disc brake conversion kit on the 65 GMC project from the folks at Master Power Brakes. So let's check it out. Previously on the 65, I had this cobbled together kit of brake setup that I was going to put together myself with some Astro rotors and some random calipers. And when I stood back and looked at the laundry list of things that I had to do on this project, it just didn't make any sense when I knew that readily made kits were available for a project like this. So with that, I reached out to the folks at Master Power Brakes. Well, I've previously done a shop tour video with them. You can find a link in the description down below to that shop tour. And they were happy to provide a rear disc brake kit for this truck so we can install it, show you what it's all about. So let's see what comes in the kit. First, let's open up this small box on top. This is the parking brake cable kit. These are stainless steel parking brake cables, so they're gonna last a long time. We're not worried about these things rotting out. It's an overall good quality kit, and it looks like they make their own adapter brackets that go ahead and go to their calipers that we'll talk about in a little bit. Now, moving on into this first box here, we'll find a brake hose kit, as well as the brackets to attach it and some clamps. This is meant to be if you're installing it onto an existing axle and you don't have the option to weld on these tabs. I'm not in that situation, so I'm not going to be using these clamps, but it is nice that they include that if you need that. If I was doing a disc brake conversion on a customer car that drove in, this is the kind of thing I would need to make that job go smoother and easier. Or if you're in a home garage and not able to weld things on, this is the kind of stuff you'd like to see. Got detailed instruction sheets here with 3D drawings to show you the installation of this kit. Master Power brake kits are designed in 3D CAD rendering and then real world tested for proper fit and application. So these are drawings that are reminiscent of the ones that they use to design the products. So it really does show you real world how these things go together. I do like that about this kit. A new set of DFC ceramic brake pads for this truck. Now, we are running aluminum wheels, nice open wheels, so I do like to see something like this rather than a bimetal or a semi-metallic that would cause rust to form on the wheels and require more frequent cleaning than these will. Now we have the laser cut and zinc plated brackets that will actually allow us to mount these calipers and kit onto our axle. And all the hardware we're going to need to install this on this truck. Next up, we have the jewel of this whole setup, and that is the calipers. Now, you notice these do have a parking brake assembly mounted to the caliper. They are zinc plated caliper brackets and calipers, so a corrosion resistant design all the way around here. And last but clearly not least is the actual disc rotors themselves. Now, these are really simple, nothing special. They're not slotted or cross drilled. They do have that option at Master Power Brakes. They asked me if I wanted it, and I just didn't feel a need for it on this vehicle. This is not a performance handling vehicle. We're not going to be road racing this thing. It's just got to run down the road straight and true and stop nicely. So I didn't feel a need for the slotted and cross drilled. And also, because of the design of the bed on the 65 GMC, they have that half fender opening design where the wheel tucks up into it quite a bit. You're really not going to see the brakes on this one, so show off is not a factor here either. This complete ready-to-install kit, as you see it here with all the components, is going to run $599 from the folks at Master Power Brakes. The parking brake cable kit is an additional $165, and of course, if you want slotted and cross-drilled rotors or larger calipers or different calipers for your application, they do have a range of options for you that run up from there. As with any brake job, the first step we're going to take is put the vehicle up and remove the wheels and tires. In my case, I put it up on the lift that we're working on, but for you, you could jack it up, put it on jack stands, whatever you have available to you. Definitely be safe about it though. Quite clearly, I can skip the next step, which would be to remove your original brakes. This project has been going on for years, so the original brakes are long gone for me. In fact, this axle isn't even stock to the GMC. It's actually out of a Chevy, but I don't exactly know what. It came from a scrap pile at one of the shops that I worked at in the past. I saw it sitting there and said, hey, I've got a use for that. Assembly is pretty darn straightforward. I mount the zinc plated caliper bracket, the first bracket onto the axle flange. The directions make it very straightforward as to what direction, orientation, and pieces are used where. Then I installed the second half of the bracket with the spacers. All the provided hardware made it really simple to put this all together. I will note that I am not torquing anything here that you should on final installation. This is entirely mock-up for my situation. I'm going to be disassembling all of this and putting it back together at a later date because I'm putting it together before paint and body here. As far as tightening things is concerned, I always recommend what I call a nut and bolt down the road. If you only did a suspension upgrade or a brake upgrade, still this is a really good thing to do. If you did a restoration, a full-on custom build, especially in those situations. I like at 500 miles, 1,000 miles, the next oil change to just go around the vehicle and check as many of the fasteners as I can get to just to see if anything's loose. If I find anything loose, I go even deeper checking things as I go around. Next up is the rotors. There are these anodized spacers that go onto the axle flange, so I make sure the axle flange is clean, stick them on, and then the rotors go over top of those. After that, for me, usually I install a couple of lug nuts just to hold the rotor flat to the face, so as I'm going here, it's not kicking around or accidentally falling off of the axle on me. The cast caliper bracket comes next, and when I install this onto the vehicle, I always like to check, even if I just eyeball it or measure, to see that the rotor is centered in the opening of the actual cast caliper bracket. This is important. For kits like this, it is rarely an issue, but on things like Willwood brakes or some other brake kits, you may actually have to shim things to get that properly centered on the vehicle. And this is where I should take an honesty moment, step aside and tell you that I did actually have an issue with installation of this kit on my application. Now, I've worked with Master Power Brakes on other projects in the past and had no problems, so this is definitely a unique situation. I don't know where this rear came from, exactly what year. I know it's a GM rear, I know that it should fit in here no problem, but the axle flange where the actual brakes mount to was in the wrong position versus the measurements that Master Power Brakes had, and also versus any other notations that I could find online. I couldn't find anybody talking about the spacing that I had for my application, so we had to actually measure and get special spacers from Master Power Brakes. Now, they made this painless for me. ASAP, they got me the new spacers, and I was ready to keep on installing this kit, but I wanted to be honest about the fact that I did have this issue, but they did make it right, no problem. After we got the caliper brackets installed, it's time for the stainless steel shims that go onto those brackets for the pads. Normally, when I'm installing the pads like this, I would lubricate all of the contact points so that they can freely move and not bind up. Again, since this is mock-up, I'm not going to do that in this situation. Probably the most difficult part of this entire installation was simply mounting the calipers on, because they have those anti-rattle springs on top of the pads. Now it's a more modern design and it's really nice, and it does actually function to keep your brakes quieter and working nicer, but it means that you have to push some downward pressure onto the caliper to compress those springs and make sure they're oriented properly. It's really not a big deal to do though. And of course, the ever important note, make sure that your bleeder screw on your caliper is facing upward. It is pointed up. Air needs to get up, it rises. So when you want to go to and bleed your brakes, that is really important. I know this is a super basic tip, but I have fixed this on more than one vehicle in the past, so I should mention it. Brake hose installation is straightforward. Got the banjo bolt in there with the proper copper washers in, and just make sure not to kink it. Just work with the natural curve that it wants to have. You don't want to twist, you don't want to kink in the hose. Now, I am installing this with those temporary hose clamp brackets that I mentioned the kit comes with. I'm just doing that for mock-up purposes. I'm going to weld some brackets onto the axle tubes later into a more set location. I just wanted to keep on moving with this project, and I wasn't sure where things were going to go until I got to the hardline tubing process, so I was not locking myself in just yet. Making sure to use my screwdriver as a hammer, my Wyotech teachers would be highly disappointed in me for that, and I just don't care. And that is the installation of this kit. If you were doing this on a weekend warrior type of project on a Friday night, you can pull it in Saturday morning, roll out, and have your functional brake system. You will have to reflare your hard lines to mate up to those new soft lines, and you'd be good to go. The eagle-eyed among you might spot the second big issue that I had with this brake kit, and this is nothing to do with Master Power Brake. It's the fact that I have this heavily modified airbag suspension on here. The parking brake cable bracket on the backside of the caliper is too close to our airbags. It may not look like it at the moment, but those airbags can expand up to about, I believe, 8 inches in diameter when fully inflated, hitting bump, maybe even a little bit bigger. Our fix for this was really straightforward. We just flip-flop side to side. Left went to right and vice versa. That put the calipers at the front side of the wheels. If this was a high-performance racing application, we might have found another way around it, but I didn't want to modify the brackets on anything. There's no reason to go cutting on things when this was a pretty simple fix for us. The only issue it creates for us is that now the parking brake cables have to run toward the back of the vehicle. I actually do have a fix for that. Let me know if you want to see how I can fix that in a future video. I have to get some parts for it, and we may do that later on. And that is it. That is an installed brake kit on a truck. We ran into a few small hurdles, but nothing like we would have run into if I had to make all of this stuff for myself, and Master Power Brakes stood behind their product and took care of it for us right away. I want to thank the folks at Master Power Brakes for providing that brake kit for it. This is not a sponsored video, but they did provide that brake kit, and I greatly appreciate it. All right, folks, I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please drop it a like. It really helps out. Let me know in the comments down below. Have you used a kit like this before? Are you going to now? Let me know what you're thinking in the comments down below. Patreon.com/HotRodHippie. That directly supports this channel so I can make more videos like this for you folks. Get subscribed to keep up to date with all the HotRodHippie content, and thank you for coming around.